Flight 347 was overbooked in first class, but seat 1A was confirmed. Michael Reeves had boarded early, briefcase tucked under the seat, face unreadable. Seat 1A. That's reserved for crew. You'll need to move to the back.
This is my confirmed seat. I'd like to see the compensation paperwork, please.
Paperwork? I'll have you removed for non-compliance. Last chance. Move now, or I call security.
Not today. Let him make this mistake. The audit needs clean data.
Without another word, he rose, briefcase in hand, and walked slowly toward the rear. He didn't argue. He didn't argue. He didn't explain. He just walked. Captain Brian Hartley watched him go, a thin smile hanging on his lips. He'd been bending rules for years. No passenger ever pushed back.
Did he just downgrade a paying passenger for no reason? That isn't right. Not even close.
In row 27, he settled into the narrow seat, the worn briefcase still on his lap. He unlatched the clasp just enough to see a flash of yellow inside, an FAA badge, the yellow circle unmistakable. No one on this plane knew who he really was. Not yet. The door sealed, the pushback began, and Captain Brian Hartley settled into his seat with the confidence of a man who'd never faced a real consequence.
Dave, you see that guy I moved? Another one who thinks he bought the airline. They got to learn.
The intercom light was glowing red. The cabin heard every word.
That's the captain. And he just handed me evidence on an open mic.
Rachel Pascal pulled out her phone, opened the voice recorder, and pressed record. The app pulsed, capturing every syllable. Brian had no idea he was broadcasting his own downfall.
Sir, the intercom might still be hot from the gate announcement.
Relax. Nobody pays attention to those announcements anyway.
In seat 27B, Michael Reeves stared out the window. His briefcase sat on his lap, the badge just out of sight. He didn't need the recording. He already knew where this flight was headed. As the plane leveled off, Rachel plugged in her headphones and replayed the recording. The captain's words hit harder the second time.
He actually said, "They got to learn," like he was proud. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern.
Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, typing a message to her union representative. She typed, "Something happened on 347. Pilot crossed a line." She didn't attach the recording. Not yet. The message sent. Rachel stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She just lit a fuse. 27 rows back. Michael Reeves opened his briefcase a little wider. The FAA badge was clearly visible now, his photo and seal. His phone buzzed. A message from FAA operations. Report status at JFK. Without hesitation, he typed 2 words. On schedule.
The audit is intact. Hartley is building the case himself. All I have to do is stay quiet.
He closed the briefcase and looked out at the endless sky. The flight was on schedule. So was his mission. Beside him, a young mother bounced a fussing baby, her face pinched with exhaustion. She looked like she hadn't slept in days.
Traveling alone with a little one is tough. You are doing fine. The worst part's already behind you.
That recording is the only proof. Send it now and Brian could claim a technical glitch. Hold it until we land.
She slipped the phone back into her pocket. The recording was safe. For now.
ATC. This is Flight 347. We've got a hydraulic caution light. Need to divert to JFK for a quick check.
Captain, there's no warning light. This isn't protocol.
I said there's a light. You saw it. We land at JFK. Check the passenger in 27B, and this whole thing goes away.
The cabin intercom chimed, Brian's voice, now smooth as polished glass. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making a minor diversion to JFK for a technical check. Shouldn't delay us long." Confusion rippled through the cabin. Only Michael Reeves didn't look surprised. He already knew exactly who was being diverted. As the plane descended over the dark water, Rachel stood near the galley and caught a fragment of a hushed conversation between two working flight attendants. One of them murmured, "Captain said he handled the 1A passenger. No paperwork, just moved him. Said he knew how to deal with his type."
No paperwork means no record of his complaint. Brian is scrubbing the incident before we even land.
She tapped open a secure cloud folder and uploaded the recording. 2 copies now, in 2 different places.
Once we're on the ground, I'll have the gate agent pull his ID. Check for flags. Maybe we'll find something interesting.
Brian, that's a fishing expedition. If you pull him aside without cause, it's going to draw attention.
Attention from who? I am the captain. My discretion is the only authorization I need.
Outside, the runway lights of JFK stretched across the black water like a trap closing.
He's not just reckless. He's building a whole fiction to bury that man. This recording has to survive.
Dave stared straight ahead, his knuckles pale on the yoke. He was flying the plane, but all he could think was that the man beside him was about to fly off a cliff. The wheels touched down in the dark, and the whole cabin exhaled, but no one clapped. In 27B, Michael Reeves sat motionless. His hands were steady on the worn briefcase. The intercom chimed. Brian's voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, a minor gate delay. Please remain seated until further notice."
The red light is still on. He's still transmitting to the whole cabin.
She pressed record. The app pulsed, invisible and silent, capturing every word from the cockpit.
And that's why you don't let passengers dictate the flight. Authority is everything.
Dave didn't answer. He stared at the yoke, his face pale as the runway lights. Michael glanced at his phone. A new message from FAA operations waited on the screen. The screen glowed. Gate 22. Ground coordinator notified. Remain in position. He snapped the briefcase shut. The time for waiting was nearly over. The cabin door stayed locked. Over the PA, the gate agent announced, "Operational delay. Please stay seated." Restlessness settled into every row.
They're stalling. Brian wants to pull the man in 27B out without anyone noticing.
Gate 22. Captain Hartley. I need a document check on the passenger in seat 27B. Just do it. My authority supersedes ground protocol. Hold him.
Dave's hands trembled on the control column. The gate agent's protest had been sharp enough to fill the cockpit. In coach, Michael didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the cockpit door at the far end of the aisle. The gate agent's reply came back flat. "Passenger in 27B. Remain seated for a document check when we deplane."
See? Protocol bends to the captain. They always cave in the end.
Not yet. Not until I see the look on that man's face when he walks past.
The intercom clicked off, and for a long moment, the cabin held a hollow silence, waiting for the next shoe to drop. The PA crackled back to life. The gate agent's voice was different now, clipped, formal. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the extended delay. Captain Hartley, please contact the ground coordinator on Channel 2 immediately." Brian's smirk froze mid-breath. He grabbed the radio handset.
Hartley on 1. What's the issue?
A clipped voice replied through the speaker. "Captain, stand by for a patch from ATC." Dave's face went from nervous to white. He'd never heard ATC patch through a ground coordinator before. Rachel felt the change in the air. Her grip on the phone tightened until her knuckles ached.
Something just changed. He's not in control anymore.
In 27B, Michael Reeves lifted his chin. For the first time, he looked straight toward the cockpit door. The cockpit was silent. Not even Brian breathed. The patch was coming, and with it, the end of his authority.
Dave, get on the radio. Find out what the ground coordinator wants. I don't speak to clerks.
Dave's thumb touched the transmit button, but a sharp voice sliced through the cockpit before he could key it.
Flight 347.
This is JFK ATC Supervisor. Is Captain Hartley on frequency?
Hartley here. What's this about?
Stand by for a patch from FAA Ops, Priority 1.
Priority 1 meant the FAA was overriding every other channel. No gate agent, no airline, no captain could refuse it. Brian's face emptied of color. For the first time, he looked like a man who understood he was finished.
Brian, what's Priority 1? Why is FAA Ops patching us?
Near the galley, Rachel exchanged a look with a concerned flight attendant. Then she started walking toward the cockpit. In coach, Michael Reeves sat motionless, but his eyes, dark and steady, were fixed on the cockpit door. Through Brian's headset, the static cleared, but the cabin intercom, still accidentally live, carried the next words to every row.
Captain Hartley, FAA Operations. Your inspector is in seat 27, Bravo.
The phrase sliced through the plane like a blade. For a split second, no one breathed.
The audit is terminated. An investigation for pilot misconduct is now open.
Passengers gasped. A muffled, "Oh my God," escaped from the rear galley. Heads turned from every direction.
Remain at gate 22. Do not release passengers. Acknowledge.
Brian's face went gray. The microphone slipped from his fingers, clattering onto the center console.
The entire plane heard it. The recording is ironclad now.
Dave stared at the yoke, as if it might save him. He didn't speak. He barely breathed. In seat 27 Bravo, Michael Reeves remained motionless. But every passenger who looked toward the back now saw him differently. For a long moment, the cabin held its breath. Then the murmurs began. Passengers turned in their seats, staring toward row 27. Rachel Pascal walked to the cockpit door. Her phone was in her hand, the recording app still live, and her face was set like stone.
Captain Hartley, I have 2 recordings of your remarks over the hot mic. Open this door.
Inside, Dave's hand hovered over the door lock. He stared at Brian, who was slumped, gray, unblinking.
Brian, she's got recordings. We have to open it.
I heard you call him that type. I heard you say they need to learn. Every word is saved.
In 27 Bravo, Michael Reeves slowly stood. He adjusted his windbreaker and picked up the worn briefcase. He opened the briefcase, just enough to let the badge catch the light. Then he started walking toward the front. The aisle parted for him. No one said a word. They just watched the man who'd been thrown to the back now walking toward the cockpit. At the front, Rachel turned to look. She saw him coming and pressed the record button harder. "Don't open that door. Tell her we're busy with a priority call." But Dave, his hand already on the lock, just shook his head, eyes wide with desperate clarity.
They already know, Brian. I am not going to lose my license for you.
He flipped the lock with a sharp click. The heavy cockpit door cracked open an inch. Rachel didn't wait. She shoved her phone through the gap, the screen blazing with the audio file.
Every single word, Captain. Including the line about those people. It's all here.
Brian's face drained of the last hint of blood. He looked like a man watching his career end. Behind her, in the aisle, Michael Reeves stopped walking. He folded his arms and watched.
She's doing the heavy lifting. When she's done, I'll deliver the final blow.
Rachel's hand was rock steady, the recording still live. The evidence was locked in. Brian's eyes locked on Rachel's phone. With a feral lunge, he threw himself toward her, fingers stretched to snatch it. Rachel stepped back, but Dave was faster. He grabbed Brian by the shoulders and shoved him hard into the captain's seat.
Sit down, Captain. This plane isn't moving again under your command.
Brian slumped, chest heaving, all the fight drained out of him. The cockpit fell into a thick, defeated silence. Outside, a knock on the forward cabin door. A ground agent was requesting permission to board. A working flight attendant leaned over and murmured, "Not yet. The captain is indisposed. Will advise." Michael Reeves resumed his walk.
His footsteps were quiet but deliberate on the thin carpet, each one a countdown. He passed the galley, the briefcase swinging gently at his side. Rachel stepped aside to give him space.
He's not a passenger anymore. He's the authority.
Michael stopped at the cockpit threshold. Brian Hartley looked up and saw his executioner. The cabin was silent, except for the recording Rachel still held up. Even the distant engine hum had faded. Every passenger was frozen, watching.
Captain Hartley. I am Michael Reeves, FAA Chief Inspector.
He extended his hand, holding the official credentials card, the yellow seal catching the overhead light. But he did not hand it over. He waited. Brian looked up, ashen. Their eyes locked across the cockpit threshold. In the right seat, Dave sank deeper, his knuckles white.
That's the man I ordered out of first class. The one I called those people. He's been in coach the whole flight, watching.
When Michael spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it filled the cockpit with the weight of absolute authority.
You are done.
Brian flinched, as if struck. The two simple words hit him harder than any turbulence he'd ever flown through. The ground agent outside had stopped knocking. The jetway was silent. The world had narrowed to this confrontation.
He's making him wait. He's making him feel every second of what's coming.
Brian's hand lifted, trembling. Michael placed the card in it like a judge delivering a sentence.
Your certificate hearing is Monday at 9. You'll want a lawyer.
The card was crisp white, scrawled on the back in permanent ink. The date, the time, a case number. Brian stared down at the card. The weight of his future hit him like a cold engine block.
I threw it all away, over seat 1A. Over words on a hot mic.
Rachel lowered her phone, the screen still glowing, recording saved. The evidence was permanent now. Dave's hands slid off the yoke. He pressed them flat on his thighs to stop the shaking. Michael Reeves didn't move. He stood in the cockpit doorway, arms at his sides, waiting. The silence was absolute.
2 recordings, 1 card, an entire plane of witnesses. He can't fly again now.
In the cabin, no one stirred. The tension had transformed into something heavier, the end of a pilot's career, witnessed by all. Michael turned to Rachel, still holding her phone like a weapon. The weight of the moment hung between them.
Miss Pascal, forward that recording to the email on my card. The FAA would appreciate it.
Already uploading, sir.
You can't do this. This is my airline, my cockpit.
Michael didn't even glance at him. He looked past the cockpit door to the working flight attendant.
Please coordinate with the ground agent. Passengers will deplane normally. My team will handle the rest.
The flight attendant nodded without hesitation. No one questioned him now. Brian's hand tightened on the card, crumpling the corners. His protest died in his throat. Rachel's phone chimed. Sent. The recording was in FAA hands now, unerasable. Michael turned to face the cabin. The authority in his posture was absolute, and every passenger still watching felt it. The jet bridge door hissed open, and the ground agent stepped back, eyes wide from the chaos they had witnessed through the window. Passengers rose slowly, their glances lingering on the cockpit door as they filed past. No one spoke. The tension still hung thick in the air. Inside the cockpit, Brian Hartley sat with his head in hands, the crumpled card on the floor next to a scattered clipboard. Dave McIntyre gathered his flight bag, his movements stiff. He didn't look at Brian. He didn't say goodbye. Michael stood aside near the galley, letting the stream of passengers pass. He waited until the aisle was nearly empty. Then he stepped onto the jet bridge, the worn briefcase still in his hand, Rachel following close behind.
Inspector, I almost didn't record it. But my daddy always said, do the right thing when it's hard.
He'd be proud.
They walked in silence a few more steps, the jet bridge sloping down toward the bright terminal. Behind them, in the empty cockpit, the captain's hat sat on the console. Brian didn't reach for it. In a quiet corner of the terminal, Michael Reeves stepped away. Rachel had gone to report to her union, leaving him to finish the job.
Regional Office, Reeves. Audit is terminated. I identified severe conduct violations under Part 121. Carrier notification will follow.
He hung up and checked the screen. An incoming call from an unfamiliar number lit the display.
Mr. Reeves, this is Richard Helms. I was just briefed by my station manager. I want you to know we're cooperating fully. Captain Hartley will be removed from service immediately, pending the hearing. We're also launching an internal review of all flight deck conduct across the fleet.
That's wise, Mr. Helms. I'll expect the cooperation letter by morning.
He hung up. No change in his expression. The man who'd been thrown to the back of the plane had just ended a captain's career. Brian Hartley was effectively finished. The airline had capitulated. The investigation was now formally in motion. The snooty pilot who bumped a black passenger to coach just found out. The tower radioed he was today's chief inspector. In the terminal, Rachel Pascal was approached by two men in FAA jackets. They thanked her quietly for her evidence.
I made a copy, just in case.
One of the men smiled as he took the drive. Ma'am, that's exactly what we needed. Back at Gate 22, Brian Hartley was escorted off the plane by two airport security officers. His captain's hat was absent. Passengers still in the terminal raised their phones, snapping photos. A fallen captain was now a public spectacle. Dave McIntyre slipped out a side exit, his flight bag slung low. He kept his head down, avoiding every camera. A local news crew had already set up near the gate. The reporter was doing a live stand-up, her voice echoing through the hall. The chyron on the screen read, "Pilot grounded after racial discrimination investigation. Airline cooperates fully." By the time the last passenger left, the story was already spreading. Social media lit up with the hot mic recording clips. Brian Hartley had flown his last flight. The man in 27B had made sure of that. Hours later, in a quiet airport lounge, Michael Reeves sat alone with a tablet and a cold cup of coffee. The news played on a loop. The FAA chief inspector seated in coach, the story behind the sudden diversion. The chyron read, "FAA inspector humiliated. Pilot benched." A text buzzed from his supervisor. "Rest up. Monday will be busy." He closed the tablet and let his gaze settle on the runway lights beyond the window. A quiet sense of justice held him still. In a small house outside JFK, Brian Hartley sat at his kitchen table. The room was dark, but for a single overhead bulb. The FAA card lay exactly where he dropped it. The date, the case number, the weight of his future, all on a small rectangle.
20 years of flying, and I traded it for seat 1A.
His uniform hung in the closet, untouched since he'd taken it off. He didn't look at it. Outside, planes still took off into the night sky. Inside, two men sat miles apart, one at peace, the other unraveling. Monday morning, 8:55 a.m. The FAA hearing room filled as board members took their seats. At the respondents' table, Brian Hartley sat in a plain suit. His lawyer beside him. The lawyer whispered some last advice, but Brian only nodded, the gesture hollow and spiritless. The chairperson gavelled, "Captain Brian Hartley, the board has reviewed evidence of gross misconduct and abuse of authority." Brian's hands locked together on the table. He didn't look up. The weight of that morning had been pressing on him since the flight. The reading continued, each word scraping away a piece of his 20-year career. In the back, Michael Reeves watched, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Brian's gaze finally lifted to the board. His eyes were wet, but he didn't speak. No verdict was spoken aloud. It didn't need to be. The end of a pilot's career had already been decided. The hearing was only a formality. The real sentence had been written the moment he opened his mouth on a hot mic. Later, in his FAA office, Michael Reeves pinned a small article to his bulletin board. The headline read, "Airline overhauls crew conduct policy after inspector incident." He stepped back. Beside the article, a photo of Rachel Pascal had been added to the whistleblower recognition board, recognized for integrity. The plaque read, "She had earned that." On his desk lay a handwritten note, its paper softened from being carried. "Thank you for showing me that doing the right thing still matters." He placed it next to his FAA badge, the yellow circle catching the afternoon light through the window. Planes climbed into a clear sky, their engines a distant hum.
The moment I stood up in coach, the world realigned. Justice done quietly.
The inspector, who once sat in 27 Bravo, was back where he belonged, and the skies were a little safer for it.